Hey, everybody, and welcome to another Office Hours. My name is Jeff Blankenberg. I am joined by Ryan Lowe today. Ryan, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, excited to be here.
I noticed we're wearing the same color here today. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes sometimes.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Right? I mean, we only have a few things, so what are you going to do?
It's true.
Anyway, we are here to answer your questions about Alexa development, content creation, whatever it may be. And we would be happy to take any of your questions throughout this entire hour. In the meantime, while we wait for those questions to show up, Ryan, I'd love to chat with you. How are things going, man?
They're going well. They're going well. I'm onboarding. I'm still trying to absorb everything. There's just so much to Alexa, which is really, really exciting. Like I feel like I'm understanding a good chunk of the domain, and then I find a whole new piece of information that just kind of opens up my eyes, and like, wow, this is a lot to digest.
Yes,
but I'm having a blast.
That is for sure, and it's one of those things that I sometimes forget because I got in so early in all of this as we've grown and as we've added SDKs and new technology and new features and permissions and whatever. I've gotten to digest them as they've come out. And sitting with you and chatting with you about what you're learning and what you've taken on, and you're like, oh my God, there's all this other stuff over here. And I'm like, yeah, of course there is. But for a lot of new developers, I would think that they're going through exactly the same kind of stuff you're going through, which is there's so much here.
Yes. And not only learning the underlying technologies, but learning the best practices and the best way to go about doing something.
Right.
And just learning, like, yeah, how do you parse through all the JSON to answer a request from in Lambda, right? Like, what's the best practice for doing that? There's just so many little pieces, and luckily we have lots of content out there that I've discovered to kind of help with this. And for me, like, a lot was the GitHub repos that we have out there, and a lot of things clicked when I was actually able to see like lines of JavaScript code that did exactly what I was looking for. So.
Yeah, I think that makes a big difference. And it's one of those things that I feel like we should probably even chat with our audience here, because there's so many different ways to present this kind of content, right? Having code samples, having tutorials, having blog posts, all of those are different teaching tools. But I wonder if people, maybe this is the question that I'll ask the audience today is, when you go to learn a new technology stack, something like Alexa or Twilio, or even like mobile development or anything, where you're building against a set of APIs or a device or anything like that, who have you seen that does an amazing job of making that content readily available, making it easy to digest and interact with? A couple examples that come to my mind, Twilio certainly is one of them. Airtable is another. I've had such tremendous luck trying to work with Airtable, and being able to, like, their API just makes sense to me, and it's easy to kind of get into. But I'm always curious from the audience, what are the things that stand out to you across the technology landscape that are like leaders? Who are the ones that you feel like, man, they really get how to deliver this kind of information? I'd love to know that. Are there any that stand out to you, Ryan?
You mentioned Airtable, which I had just recently discovered in the last year, and found their document. Anything where there's live documentation where you can like call an API and see results,
right,
I think has always been super helpful. I can tell you the flip side. What really frustrates me, this was really prevalent maybe 3 to 5 years ago. I would go to learn a new technology. They'd be like, follow this tutorial, and it would be like a to-do app. Like maybe it was React when I first was learning it. Like, okay, here's how you do a simple to-do app. And they're like, okay, great, you're done with that. Now go build your enterprise single page application, that's like 10,000 times more complex than that. And I feel like completely unprepared to make that from one jump to the other. So that's always the part that's been driving me nuts, is like, how do I go from like, okay, a to-do app to like, now I'm actually building this into my enterprise, or even just a hobby, right?
Right.
Things get complicated quickly.
Yep. So we have our first question. This is a good one from Dave Trandom on YouTube. Dave says, will we ever be able to use a personal wake word name other than Alexa? I think I know where you're headed, but I'm going to answer it with the obvious one first, which is you can change it to 4 other values. and you can do this on any of your devices today, even with your voice, but you can change it to Amazon, you can change it to computer, you can change it to Echo, and the new one that we recently added was Ziggy. So any of those other 4 words are words that you can use to wake up your devices. Now, that being said, I think what Dave is specifically getting after is I want to make up my own word, or I want to have my own name for my devices. And that, unfortunately, is not possible. There's a whole host of reasons why, but I'll give you the quick summary, which is if we were to allow you to use any word you wanted to wake up your devices, where you would end up is in a place where your device is turning on and trying to hear you all the time because so many other sounds or words trigger it. And so we've carefully selected and trained our 5 wake words specifically with the idea that they are rather unique. If you look at each of them, they all have a very hard consonant or some obvious sound that comes out of them that is not terribly common. A sound like Ziggy doesn't sound like a ton of other things. The same goes for Alexa and Amazon even. But with all of those, you'll notice there's a very hard, obvious consonant sound in all of them. So that is something that I would recommend is look into the other 4 words. But no, you won't for your own personal devices probably ever see a time where you can just set your own custom wake word. That being said, if you're building something that's bigger or broader, or maybe you're a hardware manufacturer or an auto manufacturer even, you are seeing a new technology we released called Alexa Custom Assistant. And this is where you're actually building your whole own custom assistant on top of the Alexa technology. And in those cases, you can use your own wake words. But this is more about when you actually build the hardware yourselves. So BMW is a good example. You can talk to your car by saying BMW, how much gas do I have left, or something like that. And then when you want to talk to Alexa, or maybe when BMW doesn't know the answer, it can say, hey, I'm going to ask Alexa for that instead. And then Alexa comes on and talks to you as Alexa. So lots and lots of ways to work around that. But no, for your own personal devices, probably won't see that in the near future. That was a long response, but I think that's a good one. We get that question quite often. Mm-hmm. Also, Chandra on LinkedIn said, hey, can linguistics people join this call? Everyone is welcome to sit here, ask questions, listen in. No one is not welcome here. But if you want specific, like hardcore data science linguistic answers, I don't know that I'm going to have those for you.
You're going to stump us really quickly. Yeah.
The content of this session is directly related to building things for Alexa, using the Alexa Skills Kit, or even things like blueprints or devices, if you want to talk about those. So Oxygen Box and Kini Software said they like Jovo and VoiceFlow and Dabble Lab. They also said the Mozilla JS docs are great and feature a live demo panel where you can run the examples and edit them. That's something that I'm really pushing for, is the idea of live interaction and editing with the APIs. Matthew Harmon said Chainlink is also very interesting to look at. So that's very cool. Goldzulu says he likes the Google Assistant Labs for when he wants to go through a step-by-step tutorial. Oh, that's cool. So the Google Assistant Labs, their tutorials are useful. That's pretty cool, Goldzulu. Thank you. Also, the Zero to Hero series we did, that was actually done by a person named Andrea Mattoni, who is based in both the UK and Italy. And he did a fantastic job on that series. That's good to know that you like that. We should look into doing more of that kind of content as well.
Yeah, that was one of the pieces of content that I really enjoyed and went back and watched a few times. So
now, did you find that was it the way that the content was presented? Was it the fact that it was just video? What was the thing about the Zero to Hero for you, Ryan, that stood out as useful?
He did a very great job of articulating and walking through carefully, not too slowly, but not too fast. I thought he did a great job with his presentation, but there's something about like the video or even like audio format where you can just kind of play it while you're doing something else and just watch it multiple times and stuff kind of just sinks in. So. Got it. All
right, Kitty Software wants to know, and this is on Twitch, should we expect any kind of evolution for the audio player or the video app? I think that APL is great for video, but APLA does not bring the same features to handle audio. Stop, resume, next, and previous. It can be a different use case, but I think the audio player needs some kind of review. Thanks. Yeah, I have heard similar feedback. The initial audio player, which is still in use, was designed to more or less be standalone, and it doesn't provide a great conversational interface. You choose to play music, and then it can play music really well, but getting in and out of that actually doesn't work terribly well, and I've seen people try to use it for a number of different things. So that's a really good question, Kenny Software. I don't know anything about what the roadmap for modifying or changing audio player is. And yeah, with APLA, you almost have to build your own custom handlers to handle stop, resume, next, and previous, because it's not a dedicated audio player like the audio player control is. So, yeah, I don't think I have a good answer for you on that one, but I'll look into it, because I know we are constantly reevaluating how we approach a lot of these things. And as you saw with display templates, right, and as we've deprecated those, we've chosen APL as the replacement. That is the thing that you should move all of your display templates to. So those decisions do get made from time to time, but I haven't heard anything specific about the audio player or the video app. Let's see. TradeLast says, how do the celebrity voices like Melissa McCarthy or Samuel L. Jackson fit into the Wake World universe? Are they processed in the same way? Kind of. I mean, they are there on the Wake Word engine because they have to be able to wake up the device, but they're treated more like an invocation name than they are a specific wake word that allows you to jump into anything. And I think, as an example, I'd have to try this, but I'm fairly confident in this, is that if you say something like, hey, Samuel, those kinds of things take you to the capabilities that Samuel L. Jackson's interface offers. And he can't do everything. He can do a lot, right? He can give you the weather, he can give you jokes and a few other things, but you can't, for example, ask Samuel L. Jackson to play one of my skills. That doesn't work that way. Wouldn't even know what to do, I think. So I think that the celebrity voices are more akin to a skill experience that just happens to have a broad set of capabilities than it is a true wake word where you're just interacting with the device as a whole. Ryan, have you played with the celebrity voices at all?
I have not, no.
The Samuel L. Jackson one is pretty fun because it really does sound quite a bit like him. And I guess he spent many hours in the studio. He was our first person to go through that. And we've refined the process since, but he spent many hours recording all sorts of phrases and words and phonemes to make sure that we got it all right. My understanding is that it's synthesized, though. It's not all recordings. It is a synthesized Samuel L. Jackson voice versus just playing the appropriate recording at the appropriate time. That's what lets him give you your local weather. There's no way we could possibly record every permutation of that. DJMKY says, my Alexa skill has been in skill certification review for 16 days. I only have English language locales. If I drop some of the English locales, would that speed up the certification process? I'm going to recommend against doing that, and here's my reasoning for you. If you want to remove locales, you're going to have to pull it from certification, remove the locales, and send it to certification again, which will close out any work that has been done in any way, and basically put you back at the end of the queue. So I don't think that I necessarily recommend that. What I would do is take that exact message and send it to the contact us form. If DJMKY, just curious, have you sent a message to them yet? Checking in on that, because I think that would be a useful next step for you. See if I have. Yeah, this is the URL you want to use, alexa.design/contact us. But I would just send this message to the contact us form, and I think you'll find that they should be able to give you a pretty prompt response. Most of them, I don't want to set expectations, but most of them are within 24 hours, and almost all of them are within 48 hours. So I think you should be able to get at least a good response from those folks there. That would be where I would start. If I had a skill more than 10 days out, because most of them turn around in about 48 hours, I would fill out a contact us form, because they will open a ticket. They'll follow up with you. It's easy for them to track and maintain that conversation all the way through. And it's unfortunate that we don't have one of our DAG folks here with us today. The person that was going to join us, Scott, who, by the way, Ryan, did you happen? I don't know if you were here that week. He mentioned a new game called Satisfactory. It's a PC game.
Yeah.
And he said he recommended I try that out. So I did, and oh my God, it's amazing. And so
is that why you got behind on everything else you were doing?
Yes. I spend most of my workday now just playing video games. No, that's not true. But I do find that, like, in the evenings, 7, 8 o'clock, once the house is settled, we've had dinner, and people are going to find their own thing to do. I'll find my way drifting in here to go play some games. So it's yeah, it's super cool. But Scott has a bad migraine today, so he can join us, which I totally get. I have plenty of headache myself, so. All right. Oh, I didn't realize this, but Keeney said, Keeney Software on Twitch said, in Spanish, we also have 0 to hero, but Herman Viscuso did it. I didn't realize that. That's I didn't realize that he'd made a Spanish version of it. That's awesome. Ryan, how's your Spanish?
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
All right. Well, maybe we won't have you do the Spanish one then. Let's see. Paul on LinkedIn says, can you talk about the current footprint of Alexa for Business? How many companies have embraced Alexa to use on the enterprise, and how you see its future in this new after-pandemic era? I don't have any current footprint numbers or anything like that, but I am currently working on a talk for reInvent 2021 that is I call it the state of Alexa. And it will describe a lot of those kinds of numbers. I don't know if I'll be able to get specific Alexa for Business numbers, but we will talk about how many skills there are, how many developers there are, how active people are in certain regions of the country. Well, I try to get as many numbers as I can once a year at least to put some stakes in the ground and say, hey, here's where we are. So I would recommend checking out my my reInvent talk. You don't have to go to reInvent. It'll be available online too. But if you want to come and hang out at reInvent, I'd be happy to have you there. So I don't have any specific numbers for you, but I will tell you that I expect that Alexa for Business is going to continue to grow for the specific purpose that there are a lot of business-related actions that Alexa simplifies. And the other thing to keep in mind is that we're not really just talking about voice. I know voice has been at the forefront of most of our discussions over the last 5 or 6 years. And voice is really, really important to what's going on with Alexa. But at the end of the day, Alexa is more than voice. It's and you've seen that I use the word ambient computing all the time because I'm trying to reinforce this with all of you. But Alexa is about ambient computing. And so if we talk about something simple, I know I've used this example previously, but the idea of making a dentist appointment. Today, you make an appointment when you're at your dentist for the next one, which is 6 months away. And there's no possible way you know what your schedule looks like on that Tuesday 6 months from now. So you make the appointment knowing full well that probably you're going to have to reschedule or whatever. And so a week before those 6 months, you call your dentist and you're like, hey, I can't make it. Can we reschedule? And of course, they help you with that. But what you do is you look at your calendar and they look at their calendar and you talk back and forth. You are the intermediary. You're the APIs trying to figure out what those conversations are, what appointments might work. And then you pick one and you schedule it and then everything is all good. But in that, there was a bunch of time that you spent. You had to worry about, oh man, I'm going to have to call my dentist, and you don't do it for a few days. Then you finally call them and you have to have that conversation. Like you're blocking out time and stress and cycles in your brain. And my vision for Alexa in the future, in this simplified example, is that instead you're just told, maybe while you're brushing your teeth one morning or making your breakfast, hey, by the way, I scheduled a dentist appointment for you. It's next Tuesday at 2:00. The reason that can all happen is because this ambient computing engine behind the scenes for you was able to talk directly with your dentist software, their calendar software. It was able to talk to your calendars, multiple. It was able to talk with your insurance company and make sure that you are 6 months out from your last appointment so that you won't have to pay for it. All of those kinds of things come into play as we try to make that bigger decision, and it can start to orchestrate and handle some of those things for you. So now let's scale that up. Let's take that to a business or an enterprise where there's decisions being made all the time, and think of all the little nuanced things that you just have to keep things afloat. The way I like to explain this to people is if you just stopped working, you didn't quit, you didn't leave, they didn't replace you, you just stopped doing your job. What are the things that would start to fall down, right? For me, it would be office hours, it would be Alexa and Friends. There's a number of programs inside our company. One of them is the voice of the developer. That's where I take a lot of the questions and feedback that I get from folks like you. And push that back to our product team so that we can continue to improve all the things that we're building. I'm not saying that these things would all fall apart. I'm just saying initially those would be the early obvious things that fall down. Now, how could I have some ambient computing handle a lot of that for me? Paying attention, making sure that things are staying on task. A good example of this is that I have to schedule every one of these office hours through our tool. I have to schedule every one of the Alexa friends and make sure that it's available and accessible for all of you on all the social networks, so that you can say, yeah, remind me about that, or sign up for this. I have to stop and take the time to do that every week. Now, I'm not going to have AI do the office hours, but I am going to have them schedule and broadcast and push out to social and do all that stuff. That would save me a ton of time. And that's part of our business, part of our enterprise. That's how we keep some of the machines running. So that's where I see a lot of this Alexa for Business stuff going. It's not just putting an Echo on a conference room table and allowing it to do some scheduling. That's the very first thin layer, but I think that there's a lot more that we can build on top of that. Ryan, have you given any thought to this Alexa for Business world? Like, what does Alexa look like inside an enterprise, and how might people use it in the future?
Yeah, I think, well, I love that vision, or that portrait or picture of the future and kind of where we're going. I was kind of taking this like a different way, and just hearing stories of how Alexa is being used today in like hospitality and even like elder care, where, you know, in different facilities, putting an Alexa in each room so that people are able to communicate more and need less, you know, people, staff running around trying to make sure everything's okay. I'm just blown away by the use cases that we see for Alexa today, being able to handle, you know, calls to the front desk for more towels and things like that. Like, I know there's different hotels where we're starting to see that a lot more.
Right.
And like just simple use cases like that excite me. And then beyond that, like what you're talking about, like that's just kind of like the bare level. But what I like about this is it removes people and elevates them to a place where they're thinking about bigger problems. So they're thinking about not who can I call to go run towels up to that room, but thinking about how can I make the, you know, experience for guests that much better. People are able to kind of elevate their thinking and focus on problems that AI isn't going to be able to solve.
Right.
And that to me is the exciting future. It's scheduling your dentist appointment, but it's also just, you know, making sure that you've done laundry and that you have clean clothes, and that, you know, that one big thing around us is like the kids don't have school on Friday because it's a 4-day weekend with the holiday. And like both my wife and I were like, oh no, like we forgot about this. And we just like, we got a reminder from the school last week about it. And we're like, oh no. So I ended up taking the day off work, but luckily it was the day where I could take like just simple things like this, where I'm like, I would love to have more help so that I don't have to go think I need to go sync my calendar with the school calendar. Like,
right.
Just so many things like that would just be phenomenal to hand off to an assistant.
And I think that's the whole point, is that it frees us up to think about the important stuff instead of just getting dragged down by all these little things that continue to come up over and over in our lives. So yeah, I think you've nailed it right there. That's perfect. All right, moving on.
I want to be thinking about what fun things I can do with the kids on the day off, not, oh crap, now I need to figure out if I like all that. Anyway.
Right.
I'll let you move on.
Rossi on YouTube says, Alexa is the bomb, but I notice more of the content creators in Europe are usually book writers, but why experienced script writers are getting excluded? Thank you. So I don't fully understand this question, but I think what you're asking is, why are script writers and book writers not having a bigger impact or influence on the world of Alexa? I think one of the primary reasons is because we at Amazon haven't done a good job of making those tools easy and accessible. So there are things like Alexa Blueprints, which would allow you to create a story inside of Alexa. But doing that for something the size of a novel doesn't make a lot of sense. That would actually be pretty challenging. And I know that we have some nice integrations with services like Audible to make audiobooks directly available. And so I think there's a weird crossroads there where, like, the audiobook world works really well on Alexa. But if you haven't taken your book to the audiobook world, but you want to provide whatever your script or story or whatever it is through Alexa, there isn't a great mechanism to do that. This is a great piece of feedback, Pippo. So I appreciate that. But here, one of the other things I like to do, if I go to banners, I think I have my email address here. I'd love for you to clarify more about what you mean or what you're thinking or how you would want that to work. So feel free to drop me an email. I'd love to hear more about what you're thinking there. I think that would be great. All right, back to the comments. DJ says he has sent a contact us message. They mentioned that due to COVID, there's a backlog, and they've set his ETA to September 11th. That's a long time. If I drop some locales, it might help with less work needed for certification. I do agree with that. I will tell you that one of my personal philosophies on publishing skills is that I always push out just the US English one first. That's my locale. But if I was in India, I might use the Indian one first. It's the one that's most familiar and easiest for me to manage. And then once I've done that, once I have my skill out there into the world, it's not terribly hard for me to then go back, create the other locales, and submit again. So at least I can get my skill out there and start getting an audience, knowing that my skill has passed certification in that one locale. And as long as I don't make any wholesale changes, it should be pretty easy for me to feel like the rest of them will pass also, even if it takes an amount of time. So yeah, I guess that's maybe how I would recommend that in the future is publish one first, make sure you pass certification. So you're not trying to pass cert on 3 or 4 or 10 places all at once. But that's not a terrible piece of advice to start with one and then grow from there. Oxygen
Nice
boxes.
thing.
Well, go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, the nice thing there too is you can also get feedback from one locale. Then you can make changes to your code base and then scale that out. Yes. So that's the other benefit to launching kind of small.
Back to learning and some of the good tools and APIs that people like. Gold Zulu says he really likes watching people live code on Twitch. I think that's slightly directed at me. I will be getting back to that at some point. I just haven't done it yet. But yes, I think there is something to be said by just tuning in and kind of, it's almost like osmosis, right? You just participate and you get involved and you pay attention a lot without having to actually do anything. And slowly you start to see patterns and opportunities emerge.
Yeah, and I think that's part of there's a conversation going on too about the Zero to Hero videos. There was a critique that part of it, he's just copying and pasting large chunks of code in order to get things done. And when you're creating a video, you kind of have to do shortcuts like that. Whereas I think the live streaming and Twitch gives you the medium where you can really spend time and expand upon that. So I do think the video, like I agree, it's kind of, it is a little jarring sometimes to just see like a huge piece of code dropped in there. All the code is in the GitHub, so you can go and see what's actually going on. But I think just because of the format, that's just the way those have to be.
Right. All right, so let's see. Goldzu says, I find Alexa for business use case to be more inclined towards enterprise reporting and notification. I agree. I think that there's definitely a call for executives to be able to say, how many widgets did we sell today while sitting at their boardroom table? I think that there's a lot of that kind of stuff, reporting and data summarization being done in a way where you're actually making the query live. I think that's super cool. The problem with a lot of executive reporting anymore is that it takes like sometimes minutes or hours to run the full report because it's pulling from 87 different data sources and pulling all this stuff together. I used to work in a consulting company, and we used to keep track of all of our consultants and their profitability and all the other nonsense that goes into that. And that report took like 40 something minutes to run. It was only for a couple hundred consultants. So that kind of stuff can be incredibly slow. And so to ask how many widgets we sold today, as long as you have our nice, clean data set, it's pretty easy to do. But oftentimes that data is found in 47 different locations, and it's got to dig in, summarize, catalog, and generate that all on the fly. So it can be tricky, but I think it's a valuable tool if you have the capabilities. Let's see. Brian Tarbuck says, I write Alexa skills, and my wife still says she has to say things the Alexa way. The device does not understand her. So Brian, I've seen a couple of your conversations in Slack and some other ways. Brian, this is a good discussion we could have because one of the points that Brian makes specifically is around things like timers and alarms and countdowns and like all of the other ways that Alexa will basically measure an amount of time for you. And his point is that depending on what you want, you have to use very specific words with Alexa when realistically at the end of the day, they're all the same thing. If I say set an alarm for 3 o'clock, it's currently 12:31. Or if I say set a 2-hour and 30-minute timer, what's the difference? To me as the user, there isn't really a difference. I just want at 3 o'clock for me to be alerted that something is about to be done. But we do treat them differently with Alexa, and you do have to use the right keywords. Have you seen anything like that where you have to kind of like, I have to do it the specific way in order to get the outcome that I want?
Yeah, my kids run into this constantly, right? And I will say that there are different scenarios, such as turning on the lights or setting alarms. We use alarms constantly for different tasks, like especially during the summer, like you have 30 minutes to work on homework. And then also just things like playing music where I kind of sympathize here, and they were trained by Alexa on how to get the result that they want back out, right? Like there was a lot of I don't understand, your requests coming from as responses from Alexa, and a lot of it is they're kids and they don't even use the right words when they're explaining anything. But
Right.
I think they did catch on, but I do understand and I do sympathize, like the Alexa way. There is certainly that way. And even now, my littlest Alexa still doesn't understand a few different words that he has to say because he says I'm slightly weird or slightly different.
Right.
But I haven't found a great solution to that.
No, and I think
Unfortunately,
that's kind of the point that Brian is getting after is,
yeah,
why does it matter what words I use? I want a thing to happen at a certain time. Just make that happen, whether it's an alarm or a timer. I shouldn't have like they're two vastly different things, and I don't think they necessarily need to be. It's an interesting perspective. He's brought this up a couple of times around the idea that we should think about what the human wants, not about the feature that we built. And the timers versus alarms, I think, is a good example of that. There's no real difference between I want a 2.5 hour timer and a 3 o'clock alarm. Those are really the same thing. And so with an alarm, I can't see a countdown. I don't get to see like how much time's left until my alarm goes off. And it feels like there should be feature parity there. Why not have them be very similar or identical? So very good feedback, Brian. Thank you. There's also a conversation in here about Skill Flow Builder. Pippo, if you haven't seen this, Skill Flow Builder is a tool that you can use. It's a piece of software you can install on your machine that allows you to basically think about building a skill using more or less script writing skills. So it might be something interesting for you to look at. There's still some work that needs to be done on the technical side, but for the most part, it'll do a decent job of a lot of the work for you. Have you had a chance to play with Skill Flow Builder yet, Ryan?
I've watched some videos about it, but I haven't actually dug into it myself.
No, that's right. I was curious if you had a perspective on it, but it's an interesting tool. I think it presents a problem I generally try to avoid, which is the idea of not a timeline. What am I looking for? A flowchart. It thinks about things like flowcharts, which are fine for many applications, but when we think about really building a true conversation with voice, I don't know that flowcharts necessarily serve that purpose because we want people to be able to jump and dive in the same way that you and I are in this conversation. Flowcharts don't know how to handle that very well, where I'm in one tree and now I just jump to another tree because I felt like it. So that's the only downside I see to Skill Flow Builder, but for a lot of applications, it's perfectly fine.
I saw it being presented for different game type scenarios, which seemed like a really good fit for it as well.
Yep. Let's see. For 3P skills, you really need to train on how people actually talk, just not how you think people talk. Watch people in action. Trade last, that's fantastic feedback. I don't know if that was related to a specific question, but it's always good feedback. Brian says, I'm writing a skill called Follow Me that combines timers and alarms as more friendly. Yeah, we've talked about this skill. So you basically want someone to be able to set an alarm in one place, and then when you go to your bedroom, say, bring my alarm over here so that it goes off on the appropriate device. Because when you set alarms, it goes off on the device you set it on. I think that's also an interesting idea. Let's see. Yeah, Skillflow Builder, Goldzulu says, is more like the old language basic with go-to messages.
With go-tos.
Very cool. And Habuma1 says, same thing. Skillflow Builder is great for interactive fiction. That would be a good place to go. We have caught up. We got to the end of the questions.
Sure,
but there's a lot of good feedback in here from all of you about how you enjoyed, for example, the APL videos that Cami Williams put together and the web API videos that Jomo and Justin put together. We'll have to make sure that we revisit those. I don't want to lose anything that we've done as we continue to think about new content that we create. All right. Yeah. So we are currently caught up. I'm sure there will be more questions as we go. Ryan, I need your advice. I have these shelves behind me with all of these. Well, you can't see all of it. I'm going to take you off camera for 1 second. But I have this shelf here down below that has all of these devices on it. And I want to be able to get them all powered up and running. Is there something that I can do that will give me the motivation to drill all those holes? That's the question that I need answered. Because I have the drill, I have the drill bit, I have the grommets that I need. I think I even have one here. These are the grommets that will go in the hole once I drill the hole. But I haven't done it because it just creates a huge sawdust mess. And
well, first get your vacuum there while you're drilling. That'll help.
The shop vac in here and hold that while I'm drilling, so it just sucks all the sawdust up as I go. But then I'm going through a shelf, so then I've got to catch it when it comes out the bottom. So I almost need like a double vacuum setup with so as I think about this and I'm like, oh, I'll just do it later. So I need to get these devices set up though. That would be nice. Because it looks really cool once you have all the devices lit up. And
I think either you could set a goal to live stream doing it. So then, or you could just set a deadline and I could mock you severely if you don't get it done by that deadline. That's how I get motivated. So
yeah. So
I avoid mockery.
Negative reinforcement.
Yes. Yeah. I avoid that very well.
I tend to not care about negative reinforcement much. I mean, like, if you were like, Jeff, I'm going to get you fired if you don't do that. Okay, now we're talking. That's negative. But I think I tend to respond to positive reinforcement better. Yeah, I really need to do that. Every time I'm sitting in here on camera, I'm like, oh, I just have all that stuff.
We've been talking about it for weeks. So
I know, and I just never get around to it. My weekends have been busy. Like I can give you 37 different excuses. But at the end of the day,
like that new video game that you just learned about,
I did not prioritize my time as well as I could. That's what it comes down to. I actually gave a talk at a business analyst conference on Friday, and it's one I've given a few times before. But it's called "You Have Too Much Time," which is such a joke because I don't even subscribe to half the things that I say in this talk. I really should. But it talks about how it's not that we don't have enough time; it's that we don't prioritize our time appropriately sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with playing video games. There's nothing wrong with hanging out with your family or going and seeing a movie or watching TV. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. It's only when you complain about not being able to get things done or not getting the things that are important to you done, then now it's a problem because you prioritized other things, probably in the short term, staring at your phone, watching TikTok, watching TV, whatever it is. You at the time prioritized that over the thing that needed to be done, like drilling these holes. And then later I complained about not doing the holes when I had more than enough time once. 30 different times in the last 2 weeks I've had to do this. I just don't do it. Let's see. Boy, we've had a bunch of other stuff pop in here. Do you think Alexa will fully one day integrate with front-end development like AWS Amplify? DJ MKY, can you clarify what you mean by that? Ryan, what do you think that question is getting after?
Yeah, so I used to work on the same team as some of the Amplify specialist solution architects over at AWS, and it is a ever evolving, growing product that is getting it's. I don't understand Amplify as much as I should. I wish I had absorbed a lot more from working with them. But it is a great way to get an application up and running quickly on AWS. It will just scaffold out a bunch of different infrastructure. I don't know anything about their roadmaps, but I would be surprised if they're constantly evolving. Let me just say it that way. I think if you present more use cases and talk through it, like I'm not quite sure what the use cases are, and you certainly could integrate with Amplify. For instance, like you could use Amplify to build out a whole graph database with APIs that then you could call from your backend Alexa Lambda code. And you could tie into all those different things, but it just wouldn't be like Amplify deploy an Alexa skill, right? Like you're not going to see that level of integration.
Right, but it does raise an interesting question about why couldn't I rig up my AWS account with my Alexa account so that I could do things like, well, let's use something simple and obvious, like domain names through Route 53. So Route 53 is our domain registration service. You can go buy domain names and manage DNS and do all that stuff there. And it would be really interesting for me to be able to say, is this domain available? And if it is, just buy it with my voice. Like, oh yeah, that's like, or it offers me the alternatives, right? You see that every time you shop for a domain name. And those of us that are developers on this, how many domain names do you own, Ryan?
Too many, like probably 25.
Yeah. And how many of them are projects that you anticipate you'll get to at some point?
Oh, like 24 of them.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what I was kind of thinking. And so mine's the same thing. I have this vision for a baseball card collecting service that I want to build. Basically, I keep track of all my cards, you keep track of all your cards, and then if I need one, I can look through the entire service and be like, I don't know this Ryan Lowe guy, but he has the card I need. I should send him a message and see if he'd be willing to trade it or sell it or whatever. And so I bought tradesports.cards. That's the domain. But who knows if I'll ever actually get around to building it. I know exactly how everything will work in my head. It's just a matter of executing on it. And I haven't even drilled the holes in my shelf, so who knows how long it's going to take me to build that website. But it is an interesting idea, the idea that I could ask it to spin up services or do things on AWS through my Alexa account. I think it would be to build a skill that talks to the AWS APIs and does those things. But I like the idea of like a first-party AWS experience where I could say things like, how much money have I spent on Lambda this month? Or how many records are in this database? Just like simple reporting kind of stuff, right? Directly out of my AWS account. That's kind of a cool idea.
Or do I have any alarms that are currently going off?
Right.
I was thinking more like it would be very fascinating to have from like the Ask CLI to be able to say, go spin up a graph database and have that use Amplify to go do all that infrastructure. Right now, I mean, to be clear, you can do all that. It would just be two separate CLIs and SDKs that you're using to kind of launch those two things independently and then figuring out the IAM permissions to make sure that it all connects. But a more integrated experience, I think there is room for that for sure.
Yeah. DJ MKY says that that's a lot of drilling and that he would totally watch a live stream of that. So
there you go.
Maybe that needs to happen. Let's see. Hi from New Zealand, Donna Marie Ryder. Will there ever be, this question came at the very beginning, Donna Marie. Will we ever be able to use a different trigger name rather than Alexa? So there are 4 other words that you can use. I mentioned them early in this stream, but they are Echo, Amazon, Computer, and Ziggy. So any of those other 4 words, you should actually be able to ask your device to do it with, just say, hey, I want to change my wake word to this. And you can use those other 4. You will not easily be able to change it to anything you want, though, because you'd have your device turning on all the time or it would never hear you. And either of those cases are not very good. So we spend a lot of time making sure that the wake words you can use are really well trained and perfected. So that is why you probably will not be able to name your device Steve or something like that in the near future. Kini Software. So this was a thread that I actually participated in. There was a thread on Slack about always defining a voice-only experience for our skills, and the context was a Garfield comic strip. They wanted to show via APL a Garfield comic strip every single day. And their intention, of course, was to reach out to the publisher and make sure they had permission to do that.
Mhm.
So let's skip past that restriction. But the idea that there would be an APL-based comic strip skill where you could just open it and it would show you the comic from that day is kind of cool. And the question I asked, and this is where Keeney Software is coming from, is what's the voice experience like for that? Because what about the people that don't have a screen? Which there are many, many more Echo Dots out there than there are Echo Shows. So what is the voice experience for like that? And what I pitched was, well, you could use something like Poly Voices, and you could capture the text from the comic strip and actually have it read it to you. So you might have a Garfield-esque voice, and you might have a John Darling voice, and have it read the comic strip to you in those voices. But that like infinitely creates the amount of work that needs to be done for every single day, because now not only do you have to provide that image, now you also have to like get all the text out of that comic and craft each voice and say how all that stuff's going to work. So it's a lot more work. And so the question Keeney's asking is, have you ever seen screen-only skills, and how are developers handling a voice-only device in that case? For the most part, the way certification is designed, you shouldn't be able to have a screen-only skill. There has to be a voice experience. Now, the things that I've seen, and I think probably even some of the folks here on the chat, like Gold Zulu or W Giorgio, or Oxygen Box, I know I've talked with a few of you about this before, where you've built a skill that is a really robust, interesting visual-based skill. We'll call it almost screen-only. And then for your voice experience, it's something totally different. They built basically this other like wordplay game that was for voice-only devices. And then for devices that had screens, it was this much more robust, rich kind of like word trivia experience, but it didn't work if you didn't have a screen. So I have seen that done, and I don't know if anyone wants to share their experiences with that. But in general, everything should have a voice-first experience. You should always build for voice, and then if you can add stuff with visuals, great. But I don't recommend building a skill that does not have a true voice-only experience. All right, my voice is going.
Hang in there.
I'll make it. Oh, by the way, we haven't talked about this, at least on stream. I know the last time I missed the last stream because I thought I might have COVID or I was sick or whatever. Got my test back. COVID negative, did not have it. So a little bit of Sudafed seemed to do the trick. So I'm feeling much better now, but I still have some residual like phlegm and grossness hanging out inside my head.
Happy to hear that.
Says, in New Zealand and Australia, not many people have an Alexa as the voice market hasn't yet matured in this part of the world. What would be your recommendation about helping new countries start using Alexa, which would enable onboarding to our skill in New Zealand and Australia to be a lot easier? Our countries haven't adopted Alexa as much as the US. I think that will probably always be true. I think that because our company is based here and the amount of marketing dollars that we spend in the US, I would expect the US to always be ahead. But that being said, I would jump into the Alexa Slack, Donna Marie. If you haven't been there, this is a place where content creators and skill developers, hardware people are all kind of getting together and talking about what they're doing in Slack. So I'll share that here. You can go to alexa.design/Slack. There's Ryan, we're coming up on almost 1,400 people now in Slack.
That's awesome.
It's amazing.
That is amazing.
By the end of this week, we're over 1,400. But Donna Marie, I would recommend checking that out as a place to ask some of these questions, because there are a lot of people doing a lot of interesting experiments with advertising and social media and like getting their stuff in front of the right audiences. And so that would be my recommendation, is talk with people about how they are promoting their skills, how they're getting new users. And I think you'll see that there's a lot of interesting best practices people are using there. But yeah, jump into the Slack and have a conversation with folks. I think that's probably your best bet.
If we need an evangelist to relocate to New Zealand to kind of help.
You're in for New Zealand?
Yeah, totally.
All right. Good to know. We were actually just looking at that, so I'll see what we can do to put your name on top of the list.
Thank you. Yes.
DJ MKY says, so Alexa is going more screen-based. I don't know that it's going more screen-based, but that certainly is a large part of what is possible now. I know it's voice first, though with the screen, you could integrate Amplify with the screen, database, voice, Route 53, integration too. I agree. I think all of that stuff is doable. But when we talk about skill development and when we're building experiences for people on their Alexa devices, at the end of the day, it has to have a voice first component. But that doesn't mean you can't do a bunch of cool, interesting, amazing stuff with the screens. Tradeless, this is a good piece of feedback for people. He uses Alexa Answers not just to improve Alexa. If you guys aren't familiar with Alexa Answers, it's a place you can go. It gives you questions that people have asked that Alexa didn't necessarily know how to answer properly. You can write your own answers for those things. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from Alexa Answers about the answers that I've written and the kinds of positive experiences people have had because of the help that I gave. But he's saying that it actually allows him to help understand how people interpret or misinterpret speech. And as he's thinking about building his utterances, he uses those as examples to say, oh, I see a lot of people say things this way, or this seems to be a common thing that I see when I'm answering Alexa Answers. I want to make sure that I'm not creating that same situation for my users. So very, very, very cool. That's a great piece of feedback. Use it as a research tool, not just as a way to help Alexa be smarter. Have you written any Alexa Answers, Ryan?
No, I've completely forgotten about it, in fact.
Yeah, I think it's...
Thank you, Trade Last.
Is it Answers? I can't remember the URL.
I tried to see if alexa.design/answers would take you there. We have that for everything else, but not...
We should, you know, and I'll fix that here just after, but it's alexaanswers.amazon.com. I don't have that as a shortened URL, but I will make that as soon as we're done here. But when you log in, which I'm going to do here right now, the questions that I have are, what year did Mission Impossible come out? Sometimes they're impossible questions like this, not because it's Mission Impossible, no pun intended, but because there were multiple movies. So the assumption here is if they say Mission Impossible, they probably mean the first one. And so Alexa has shared the answers that I've written over almost 5,000 times, Ryan. That's pretty cool. That's nice. My impact. My average answer rating is 5 stars. Sweet. I've contributed 47 different answers. I did a lot of this in like the fall of 2019, so I haven't written a lot lately. But those are the kinds of questions you see in there. Let's see, what else do we have here? Keeney Software says, now with Amazon Associates built into Alexa, you could recommend someone buy a show device when they only have a voice-only Echo. That's pretty funny. Yes, you could totally do that. I don't think that would be a problem with certification either, but you would still need to provide probably more of a voice-only experience than, hey, go buy a better device, I think. Gold Zulu was doing a submarine game that has visuals on the display and then totally auto-only. When you're on an audio-only device, it's just all the audio sounds that you would hear when you're inside a submarine. Let's see. Fabio is asking if the user ID in a response request is always the same. Yes, you should be able to use that as a reliable identifier of a user so that you know it's the same person each time. Yes, it's not necessarily for one user, it's for one account. There's also a speaker ID. If you turn that on, that will allow you to recognize individual voices. And then you can use the speaker ID as a mechanism for understanding that it's me or my wife or one of my children. So it depends on how granular you want to be. Trade last answers have been used almost 14,000 times. Wow, that's awesome. Gold Zulu prefers Stack Overflow for a lot of his Alexa knowledge. That's Stack Overflow is great. Is Amazon Answers available for Spanish? I don't know. If you go to alexaanswers.amazon.com, I don't know if it's based on your locale. If I go to settings.
Yeah, good question.
It's probably making some decisions for me based on my profile, my Amazon account. But I don't know if it's available in other languages. I would think it would be. But because my account is based in the US, I'm sure I'm getting US English automatically. I don't know about the Spanish one though. Keeney, if you find out, let me know. I would love to be able to share that more broadly. But Alexa Answers is kind of cool. It's interesting to see the kinds of questions people ask that Alexa couldn't answer. All right, Ryan, we have 4 minutes left. How's your driveway? Is it back in action?
I gave up on half of it. So it's like a big horseshoe. Half of it is completely just gone. And in fact, our mailman delivering the swag I got, our mailman got stuck in the driveway because it's just pure sand there now. So we had to get someone to yank him out of there. But half of it's working. I need to put a big sign like road closed or driveway closed so that people don't have that problem.
Do you think that you're going to refinish the whole horseshoe?
I think so. What we need to do is we need to build a bridge. So there's a wash that goes diagonally across our yard there. And for 360 days out of the year, it's completely dry. But when it rains, that turns into a flood zone with water a few feet deep flying through there. So anything we do to fix it is just going to get washed away again. So what we have to do to actually fix it is build a bridge with a culvert underneath it.
Nice.
And that just seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, but then you'll be able to say you built a culvert, and that's something.
Oh, I don't know if I would actually be doing the work. So I'd probably be writing a check to have someone come do the work. Yeah. That's more than just drilling a couple holes in a desk. So
Agreed.
It's a little bit more than, because if you do it wrong, then it too gets flooded down the river, and then your whole driveway is gone, and all kinds of other problems happen. Yes. So
I get it. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I'm excited to see whether people are going to get into it looks like there's a UK version of Alexa Answers. And so there may also be a Spanish version. Actually, let me try that before I leave here. If I take this URL, Alexa Answers, amazon.co.uk, that takes me to a UK version of it. So what if I just do amazon.es? Website temporarily unavailable.
Yeah.
What about MN? Also not available. What about Brazil? Nope. All right, I'm gonna have to talk to some teams. It seems like that should be a pretty easy thing to set up everywhere. AlexaAnswers.amazon.es is what I tried, and it said it did not exist. All right. Well, Keeney, I'll talk with the team. We'll see what we can do. I don't make any promises here, but hopefully we can get something figured out, because there are people asking questions in all the languages, and it would be great to be able to help all of them. So thank you guys all for tuning in. Thank you, Ryan, for being here. My partner, Ryan, in all of this. And we will see you guys all again next week. Take care.
Thanks.